I can use the $25 each month for, and then when it's out, then I just set aside my that Azure project, or come up with a new one when the month rolls over and I get my $25 back. So if you just search for Visual Studio Dev Essentials, it should take you to that page, and you can go ahead and join, sign up for that. You don't need I don't think you need a credit card. It won't charge you, it just turns it off. You can also run 5 Linux D11 virtual machines for 24 hours. But I think it's kind of fun to like take a G, like the biggest one, and just throw it all up there and then see how long it lasts. Is it working yet? Kind of.
Does the $25 roll over if you don't use it?
No, it doesn't roll over. You just get a fresh 25 every month. So, yeah, no, it's not like minutes with your... Do we even have minutes anymore with our...
No, it's data.
No, it's just data. No one cares about minutes anymore. Yeah, talking is free because no one actually talks anymore. Yeah, talking and texting is free. It's just the data. So, all right. So once you've got that, and for those of you who are setting it up, continue on setting it up. But when it comes to creating VMs in Azure, there's basically 3 ways to do it. You can do it using the portal, which we'll start with a little bit today. You can also do it using PowerShell, which I'm not going to cover today. And you can do it using ARM templates, which I will also cover tonight for a little bit. So we'll try to hit on two of the 3. The reason that I tend to not use PowerShell to deploy directly to Azure anymore, and I go for ARM templates instead, is because PowerShell, you have to have it exactly the way that you want, and you have to have it in order, because if you don't put the right... Then you'll get an error message that says, hey, it doesn't work, like this thing's not here. There's really no intelligence in it. You have to write your PowerShell in order, calling for all of the things. If you've got a big PowerShell script, then you run it, and it dumps in half of the stuff, and half of the stuff doesn't work for whatever reason, then you go back and edit that PowerShell script and run it again. You'll get all the opposite errors now, because it'll be like, you'll get an error for things that were already created, or things that give a different response now that they exist. So your script doesn't run clean the first time through. With an ARM template, it will just change the things that need changing if you rerun the script. So you won't get an error message that says, hey, here's an error because a storage account already existed. It'll just go, hey, there's a storage account, it already exists, I'm gonna use it because it appears to be the one that you wanna use. So it has a little bit more flexibility that way. Now, one of the fun but frustrating things about using the portal is every couple of days they keep changing things around. So the nice search box up at the top is relatively new and handy. So if I want to go ahead and create a virtual machine, I can just type, and it's got the intelligent search features in there for us to figure out what we want to do. So you can see I can do virtual machines, I can do virtual machine scale sets, all sorts of things like that will just help you search. Some of the other things it will also let you do is search through your own machine names. So it will, if I'm typing in something that I know I have, it will look for my VMs. So now I don't have to go through and like dig all through the different drop-down menus and things like that to find a VM or a virtual network or something that I wanted to work on directly. With this version of Azure, which is the Resource Manager version that we're looking at, you can still manage classic things, or classic Azure Service Manager components. But just about everything that I do now, I do in Resource Manager, which groups everything into resource groups. Resource groups are particularly handy because If you delete the resource group, it will delete everything within the resource group. If you played with Azure even a year ago and we're using the classic version, if you deleted a VM, it would delete the VM but leave the storage or leave the networking and leave different components of it kind of lying around. Then you had to go and delete all of those things in order to completely clean out everything that you want. With a resource group, you put everything that you want to manage as a whole in the resource group, and then you can kill the whole resource group and all of those other components go away. I can drill down. You've got my resource groups. I've got my virtual machines, my virtual networks. One of the other things that's been really nice about the new portal compared to the old is the old portal just kind of had things in order based on like how we created them. So they were in alphabetical order. There was really no way to organize them in a way that made sense for you. A lot of improvements have been made to this. You can go ahead and you can actually change what's on here. You can take these services and if you put a little star next to it, it will turn those on the side there so that you can customize the navigation to your liking. So we were going to talk about today making virtual machines. So I'm going to go under virtual machines and we're going to click add. We're going to check out some of the blades and some of the options that you need to answer as you're going through the portal. And when I'm trying to do something new in Azure, I tend to usually try to build it out in the portal first to just sort of get a handle of what I want to create, how I might want to customize it, what questions it's going to need answering and things like that. So we go through and we want to do a virtual machine. I'm going to do a Windows server because I like Windows servers, but you can do all sorts of Linux servers, pretty much whatever you want. And since we've got it, we might as well do the new version. So you do get the option to deploy to the classic or resource manager. So I'm going to stick with resource manager, but if you have a reason that you already have resources that exist in classic and you need to tie something to that or use that same type of setup, you can pick that one. So I'm going to just hit create. So now we're going to get the blades and start to see all of the things that it's going to ask for. This is one of the reasons I like to go through the blades when I'm creating something for the first time, because it's going to help you figure out what things you need to customize and what things you might want to pre-create. So let's see. You always have to name our VM. Now we have disk types. We can do with the SSDs, which are the standard storage. And the standard storage has the locally redundant, the geo-redundant, the read access geo-redundant. You have a lot of different options with the standard, with the HDD storage. And then we also have our SSD storage, which is the premium storage. Now the two differences between the storage, which is important, is the standard storage, the regular disk storage is you only pay for what you're using. So you can say that you want a VM that happens to have, or attach a data disk that's 100 gigs or however large you want it to be, but if you only put 10 gigs worth of data on it, you're only going to pay for the 10 gigs worth of data. Okay. But with the premium storage, you select how much storage in the premium tiers that you want. I think it's there's like a tier that's the 10 tier, the 20 tier, the 30 tier. You pay for that whole chunk of storage for the time that you're using it. They've also gotten a lot better at putting little help files in, so you can see that the solid state storages are backed by solid state drives, and the regular ones are backed by, spinning Rust, magnetic disks. We are going to be cheap. We're going to make sure we're going to just do the regular disk. You always have to put in a username and password. And we've recently changed, it needs to be longer. I want to make it now. See if that works. Okay. Create your password. One of the relatively new things we have in Azure that went, I think it's in preview now, or at least public preview, is the Azure Key Vault. So when I'm using the portal, I have to type in a username and password, but when I'm doing some sort of programmatic or coded way of deploying, I can change where I put those keys. So when I deploy a lot of stuff using a template, I can put those keys in someplace like a key vault, or someplace that's a little bit more secure than, potentially more secure than just a username or password. So I'm gonna do that. If you have more than one subscription, you can pick where you want that to go. I'm gonna use my developer program benefit because I've still got some money left in there. And then resource group. So you can create or use an existing one, create a new one or use an existing. I'm actually gonna create a new one. And then the location. We've got something like 32 regions now. But I tend to stick with West US, but if you would like to spin up your VMs in Japan or East Asia or Canada, you are welcome to do that. And then we click OK. That's just going to give us our basic settings. So now we get to pick some of the fancier things. This is our sizes. We're recommending the D series now, and once it loads, it'll also give you a nice little idea of the monthly estimate on this. But since this is a test VM and we're probably not going to be logging into it or doing anything really of use, I want to go cheaper than that. So if you click View All and you scroll down past, we've got a lot of different stuff now. Those are the Gs. So we've got the Gs, which support premium disk. The G2, we're looking at $1,000 a month. The Fs, we're gonna come down to the A's, and those aren't available to me in my. So we're gonna just go with a nice A1, which is only gonna allow me to have one core, and I can attach 2 data disks, and I'm gonna get a relatively low amount of IOPS, but for the sake of our demo, that's all I really need. Okay. Now here's the area where you're gonna get a bunch of different storage options where we're gonna go ahead and make up stuff for you if you don't wanna make it up yourself. So storage account, it's just gonna go ahead and create a random storage account. If I wanted to change that, I could create a new one. And here's where I can determine the replication, my locally redundant storage, my geo-redundant storage, or my read access geo-redundant storage. And the pricing for each of those things varies. Locally redundant is the cheapest, geo-redundant is twice as much as the locally redundant, and read access geo-redundant is like a little tad more for the convenience. If I was doing premium, I could choose the performance. If I was using a VM that supported higher performance. The higher performance storage is obviously backed by the solid state. So, really, can somebody just hit ignore on that? Or not. It's a Windows phone. Is it what happened? Oh, you didn't look? You totally looked.
I'm not that nosy.
You're not?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Only with my kids.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so you have to have a storage account. You can use one that already exists. Virtual network. One of the things that is better now is that you're going to get a virtual network by default with every machine that you create. In the classic version, you got a virtual network, but if you didn't create a virtual network to your own liking, you got a virtual network that was addressed in a way that you couldn't manage that network after the fact. So you get a network that is manageable and customizable automatically with a VM now. However, I still like to create networks, control them a little better. So you can actually go in and edit one, set the address space, the default subnet name, and the subnet address range, and you can edit it after the fact. But a lot of times I like to actually just pre-create my network and then select it from the list. But we'll just go with the default. You can select which subnet your machine's going to be in. And you're also going to automatically get a public IP address, a v4 public IP address with every VM. So gone are the days of you having the cloud service where you have multiple VMs sharing an external IP address where you have to do sort of the port management, stuff like that. You get an individual IP address to every VM that you create. You also get, by default, a network security group that protects the front of that IP address. The big distinction between that, you can actually take that off and say you don't want one. So if you leave the network security group off, the only thing that's protecting your VM is the firewall on the software firewall on the operating system. So you install something that opens up port 80, then port 80 is going to be open on Azure as well, because there's basically nothing within at the end of the Azure IP address doing any sort of firewall options for you. So anything that you open on the operating system is then open to the public. With the network security group on the front, now you've created that extra layer. You have to open up something on the operating system, and you also have to open up a port or a hole through the network security group to allow traffic in from the internet to get to the opening on the software firewall. Other options are extensions. If you want to add any extensions for management after the fact, this is where if you are using a Puppet agent, or you want to use PowerShell, TCS, or you want to turn on Chef so that you can control things using Chef, you go ahead and pick that extension. You can also do a custom script extension. So if none of these tools are what you want, and you really just have a script that you want to run on the machine after the fact to install some software or do some configuration, you can run your own custom script. So you tie that in there. High availability. You can do an availability set if you like it. And then you want to turn on some monitoring. And now for the diagnostics, there's a separate storage account where it will put the diagnostics information, and you can go ahead and drill down into that separately if you want to. So once those things are all good, it'll run a little validation, make sure everything's passed, and if you hit OK, it'll go ahead and build our VM. So for me, nowadays, I found that's a lot of clicking. I don't want to have to answer all those questions all the time. I want to have a preset sort of template to go ahead and be able to deploy those things all the time. So the next thing I'll do is walk you through that. Doug, do you have anything to add, or does anybody have any questions so far? Or
did it have an OS that it already gave you?
Yes, when I select Windows, I got a choice of that, and I went with Server 2016 Data Center. So I went with the new version of that.
You did go with containers though.
I didn't do the one with containers, though. No, I didn't do Nano either on this one. So next.
Are all the patches and updates done automatic?
Yeah. So this is, they update the images with the latest release kind of on the back end. However, once you install that server in a VM, in this scenario, being infrastructure as a service, once you've installed that server, if I don't touch this server and turn it on, it's not going to automatically patch on the back end. I have to make sure, I have to go in. It'll be on for automatic updates, but we're not pushing a new version of that operating system to you in any way, shape, or form. Once you've installed it, you're responsible for maintaining that image going forward. Okay, because it would be, most people would not like us to go into their production servers and start screwing around like that. Yeah, exactly. Question?
So I tried to sign up for those essentials. And then under the page where you can activate, which I got wrong. When I click to activate, it tells me it's only available to develop program benefit members. So now I try to sign up for a trial. It says it's not active, but it just told me that I need to
It usually works itself out. You can try logging out, log back in. Empty your cache. Just sometimes it just takes a little bit on the back end for it to go in there.
It's just, I'm sorry, it's just
Yeah, no, I know, and it's hard to stop and troubleshoot one person's subscription challenge. So templates. So like I said, I like to actually deploy things using templates, and so I'm going to take a look. We're going to flip over and take a look at some templates. So one of the templates that we're going to look at is, let me make this bigger. So we use a lot of GitHub now here at Microsoft as a way.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Where am I? Hello?
There you are.
Can't hear myself. So do people know what GitHub is? So do we need a crash course on GitHub? Yeah, I think so.
Okay, you want to crash the course on GitHub now?
You want to do it now? Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Can we spend a few
Sidebar.
minutes? Yeah,
Sidebar.
So you're in the middle, you're in GitHub. This is a script that somebody has posted, right?
Yeah, it's mine actually, but you know.
Okay.
But anyway, yes.
So let's pause for a second, switch gears, because that's what we do is we're IT
Are
administrators.
you going to talk about GitHub?
No, you're gonna
because
do
I
it.
was going to check on our subscription.
Okay.
Well, I was going to look on our subscription. If you're going to talk, I'll go do
No,
something else.
I need to talk, but I need you on the back
Okay,
end.
fine. All right. Okay.
So what I would do is, let's go another browser window. Let's talk about what GitHub is, because I still don't understand it.
Okay.
But that's why you're here, is to answer my questions and everybody else's. So GitHub is a repository for code
Yes.
and a whole bunch of other crud that people seem to be posting up there.
You see, I mean, some people use it to write blogs, and I've heard of people who basically plan their wedding on GitHub.
It's all kinds of
it's
crazy
just source
stuff.
control.
Yeah. So I went down to a restaurant, right, that's down the street from us, and I wanted to see what their menu was, and it's on GitHub. It's like, well, I thought it was for code. So it's turned out to be,
It's for source control.
it's the dumping grounds for wherever you want to store it.
So it's a source repository for documents that change as a way to keep track of those changes. So obviously ideal for code, but also ideal for rotating restaurant menus. Hey.
Yeah, I don't think. So, and companies are posting up here, like their HR documents. You can use it for whatever you want to use. It doesn't specifically have to do with code or restaurant menus. How much does it cost?
It's free.
So it's free.
You can have I think as many public repositories as you'd like. However, if you want private repositories, you pay. 7? Why, thank you. Okay. Huh?
The lowest $7.
Oh, $7 a month.
For private?
The lowest private.
The lowest private one. Okay.
Unlimited repositories. They changed, it used to be limited, now it's unlimited at $7.
Okay. So anyway,
You can pay more.
So how do they make money? It's $7
They make
a
money
month.
at higher level storage.
So you're paying $7 a month for unlimited,
That's the lowest one you can pay.
but you get like 100 gigabytes or something.
I forget what.
Yeah, but I mean, you're paying for storage.
Yeah. And for the application. So
Yeah, okay.
Or you can also run pages, websites on it. And in Jekyll, you basically flatten a file, and they have a system called Jekyll, which is totally weird.
Do you know what that is?
no, beyond me.
So is it
Yeah.
like a PDF?
No. Jekyll is actually a rendering engine that you can render your web pages out of running right off. It's called Get Pages there. You've got GitHub, and you've got Get Pages, which is the web hosting service that they offer. Okay.
All right, let's not go too far down the
let's
rabbit
not
hole.
go too far.
For what I use it for is a place to store my templates and my parameters files so that I can deploy directly from the internet. So if you were to write a script that you were going to manage in-house that did something, you might store it on your workstation or on a server in your data center.
Or on OneDrive?
Or
like
wherever. But then when you need to go to deploy that, you would need to run it from your machine so that you could run that deployment from your machine so you could access that local file that you created. By putting the file up here in the internet, I can just access it via a URL. So I don't need, I can go to, I can go anywhere and call that. But it also means that anybody here could go to that same URL and deploy the same thing that I just created. So not only is it source control for me, but it's a way to share that out with others. And GitHub has been a very collaborative way for people who are doing open source development to have others be able to collaborate with their code, because now they can go to this public repository. They can fork off different areas of the code, make their own edits, and then request for those edits to be reviewed and then added back into the big repository and things like that for others. So that's how you were doing that source control and that collaboration for open source software.
So if you have code up there, I can download it, I can use it.
Yes.
We can then fork it, so I can make some mods to it.
Right.
I can return it back to you. You can either accept my changes and incorporate it into your code.
Or just be like, thank you very much.
Yeah, or I could have it and keep it and have it as a fork.
Right.
And we could go sideways from there.
Right.
So does that make sense? Is that a good explanation for it? I still don't.
But yeah, so
yeah, it works.
yeah, so that's what you do. So you can look for something. You can.
It's a distributed source code.
Yes, and it is distributed. So there is no master place. It's just wherever you happen to install the Git software and create a repository locally, and then do the work, and then you just kind of you sync it up. So anyway.
And there's an app for that.
Yeah, there is.
The way that you're making money is that you're consulting for people who want sophisticated environments.
I see.
They'll hire.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, so you can see like I've got here. I've got a couple repositories. So this containers camp one, you can see by the little image next to it that that's a fork off of somebody else's repository. So I've used that container camp. I've made some edits. I've merged stuff into there. I have a place where I keep my templates, Azure automation. You can see some other, anything that's got somebody else's name, like to buy a Z here or Goose, that's other repositories that I'm a contributor to. So I have the ability to contribute to that code directly versus having to ask, versus having to fork a copy and go at it on my own. So you can fork a copy of anybody's repository that you find. It becomes your personal copy of whatever they started with. They can keep making changes, and your fork is just its own separate thing, unless you go ahead and do any merges. So anyway, so that's GitHub in a nutshell. So back to my templates over here. So I have a relatively large template that's got a couple lines in it, 300 or so, that deploys any number of nano servers for you. So what I wanted to do is actually break it down for you so that we can talk about the templates a little bit here. So when you start with the template, you have a couple requirements. Schema content version. So the schema tells Azure what part of, what type of schema of Azure it's referring to. The content version, you have to have something in there. By default, it's 1.0.0.0. You can use that as a way to also sort of version control your templates, but you can change that number. And then you need to have a resource to deploy, and then parameters and variables are optional. And then outputs is also optional. You can run a template and get an output of the results of that template, and then maybe use PowerShell or some other language to take that output information and maybe utilize it elsewhere. I tend to not use outputs just because I want to shove stuff up into Azure and leave it there. So that's the beginning of a JSON template. One of the biggest challenges with templates is you can find templates all over the internet right now. There's a whole web page of Azure Quick Start templates, and you open them up and you look at them and they're thousands of lines long, and you're like, I don't even know what this template does. How do I go about looking at this template so I know what I want to edit, what I want to change for myself? So the easiest way for me to learn about it was to break it down into its very small parts and build something that got increasingly more complex until I understood what I was looking at. So this is a JSON template in its simplest form. Now, one of the things that you need in Azure before anything else is storage. So the first resource that I went ahead and built was a storage account. So you can see that I've got one resource dropped in there. The little green slashes are comments. I put some comments in there just to help walk through. You can't have comment lines or any comment notation in the template that you're going to use in Azure. It will error out. So this is for display purposes only. So within my resource, you have to have a type. You have to have an API version. So the type we're calling is Microsoft.storage/storage accounts. And that tells Azure, hey, I want to build a storage account. Go call the REST APIs for storage accounts and do this thing. You're going to give it a name, and you're going to give it a location, and you're going to give any sort of necessary properties. So we saw in the template or the portal when we walked through the storage account that some of these same things we had to answer. We had to give it a name, we had to pick our region, location, and we had to determine what type it was going to be. So this is the standard locally redundant storage. Now I called out that the name and the location are parameterized. So instead of typing, I could have just typed in quote unquote West US, and every time I use that template, it would create it in West US. It would also try to create the same name over and over and over again. But the whole point of doing infrastructure as code is so that you can reuse this stuff. So using parameters and variables is one of the easiest ways to make this code reusable. So you can see I'm calling those two parameters, and it would be obvious to say that the parameter information should go in that parameter section. So you can see I've got that marked up there at the top of not yet completed. I haven't put the parameters in yet. So let's go ahead and add some parameters. Excuse me.
Intermission.
Anyway, so my resource is right down here at the bottom, and we're going to go ahead and add the parameters. So we need to add the new storage account name. So the name of my parameter needs to match up at the top. I could have called this Bob, as long as my parameter up top said Bob. It'll just match them up. So I recommend putting in parameter names that actually are meaningful to you. So you can see that the new storage account name is going to be, it's a type of string, and I'm going to default it as small store. And if you have to put some comments in there, you can do this metadata description, and that is the way that you can add some additional comments in. So you can see I've got the new storage account name as the default is small store, and the location is West US. One of the things that I did that's kind of neat is set a group of allowed values, West US or East US. If I gave this template to somebody else to copy into Azure, the template choices would become some of the options that show up in the drop-down menus in the blades. So you can actually control what people see in the drop-down menus of the blades. This is really cool if you're building maybe a solution to resell as part of your business, your business model, and you want to say, here's a template that deploys my solution for you, and these are the options that we've already pre-selected that we've narrowed down. So you could use that for what locations you want to run it in, what types of VMs you want to support. Maybe you don't want anybody to randomly pick A0s because they're too small or not fast enough, and you want to be able to say, we recommend using these Ds, or we only want you to use Gs. You can build a template to sort of limit those choices and kind of direct people down the path you want to go. So those are our basic parameters. The default value is going to be West for the location, unless somebody picks something different or overwrites this with a parameters file, which we're going to get to a little bit later. But we're going to get but this is going to be the default. If no changes are made, no overwrites, you'll get the default values as you go down the line. I'm going to call out the existence of the parameters file so we know it's here. You can have a separate file that happens to be name.parameters.json instead of just file name.json. And it has the schema and the parameters. None of the other options. So you just the schema and the parameters, and you lay out parameters that you want. So you can see with this file, I've actually said I want my storage account to be other store, and I want the location to be in the east. So if I ran this parameters file, it would override the defaults. The other thing that is key, crucial before we deploy a VM, is for us to go ahead and add in our virtual networks. Now, you can create JSON templates in you can open up Notepad and type away if you'd like, but I'm using Visual Studio Code. You need some sort of intelligent editor, Notepad++, something that will actually understand a JSON file so you can modify and make it a little easier to work with. They get kind of big kind of quickly. So sometimes I lose track of where I am between the variables and the parameters and what resource I'm working with. So because I'm using Visual Studio Code, I'm able to shrink down and collapse the areas that I don't want to see anymore. So you can see I'm going to close up storage account so that I can just work with the virtual network that I want to work with. It's also a great way to find errors because it's really easy to get tangled up in the brackets and the commas with a JSON file. So you can shrink things up and sort of see like, oh, this is the brackets that belong together and stuff like that. Visual Studio Code will also highlight the matching bracket for you. So if I highlight that bracket, now you can see that it matches with the bracket down here at the bottom, the closing bracket. So that's a helpful way to troubleshoot some of the errors you might have. So anyway, virtual network, very similar to the way we did the storage group. We have a parameter that's going to give us the virtual network name, and it's going to reuse that location. So all of these things are going to go in the same location in order for them to work together. We also need to set up an address space and some subnets. So we're going to go ahead and expand those out. So it's going to ask you for your address prefix. So that's going to be, oh, do I want a 10.0? You know, what's my subnet mask going to be? And then what are my subnets going to be? And you have to give them a name. And then also a subnet prefix. So we're going to start naming those things up. And once again, we're using parameters. So we're going to go ahead and add the parameters up to the top again. So there's our network one and our location. We did that already. So now you can see I've got a VNet. I'm going to call it the small network. And I'm actually going to do a 192.168/16 as my address prefix, and I've got a subnet of 20. So that's what we're going to go ahead and call that. My first subnet is going to be subnet 20. And add that in. So I still haven't gotten to building the VM virtual machine part first. I'm just laying all the groundwork. Now, the other important thing to note about JSON templates is in one template, you do have to build out all of the dependencies, all of the things that you need within that template, or you have to be able to call them with nested templates. But the template that you're running needs to know where to find all of the things it needs for a successful deployment. So even though I'm just trying to build some virtual machines here, I have to make sure it knows to put in the storage account. I have to make sure it knows to put in the virtual network, otherwise, or to look for a virtual network, otherwise the template will fail. So the next thing I need is a public IP address, because that's another one of those things that gets handed out with a virtual machine these days is a public IP address. So I'm going to get told that I'm going to add a public IP address. I have to give it a name. It's going to use the same location. And I have to determine how I'm going to allocate it, static or dynamic. And I have to give it a DNS label, an external DNS name as well. So public IP addresses get two things. They get the name of the IP address in the Azure portal, like what is this IP address object? And then there is also a DNS label, the external DNS label for the public IP address that has to be unique to the entire world in the DNS namespace. We have been using parameters, but in this case, I also tossed in some variables. So variables work the same way as parameters. They do the same purpose as to name things, but Variables are much easier to add. They're right up here. It's simply the name of the variable and the answer. So it's always going to use this. You can't override those with the parameters file. It's always going to take what is in this template. So parameters are figured out at the running of the file with a template or making selections in the portal. The variables allow you to change the template later, but it's always going to run what's set in there. So you can see I'm calling it small cloud IP, public IP address. It's going to use dynamic IP address type, and the DNS name externally is going to be small cloud lab, or we hope anyway, if it's not taken. So we're going to go ahead and slowly add all of these things in. The other thing that virtual machines need in Azure is a network interface. We've always got a plug. We need to be able to plug it in somehow. So now we have to add on the network interface. Now these things are starting to get a little bit more complex because they have more things that we can configure. Take a look at this one. The network interface has a name of the NIC. It's going to use a location. This has a dependency. You can't create a network interface, the plug to plug this virtual machine into Azure, without a public IP address to tie it to and a virtual network to plug it into. This is where JSON starts to get a little bit of that logic. I could have slapped this network interface as the first thing in my template, and it would look at it and be like, oh, this depends on a few other things that I have to build down here, and then I'll go back up and get that. So by calling out that things have dependencies, you can put them in the file in any order, and it will go ahead and go to the right spot and make sure those things are built before it goes back to continue on. If I built these things out of order in a PowerShell script, it would just error out and be like, you don't have a network interface, so I'm not gonna do this part. There's also some properties you can set. The name of it, obviously the private IP, the public IP address. You're gonna have to find that. This is where we start combining things together. It's gonna say, hey, you need that public IP address that you're dependent on. Go find it in the public IP addresses and get the variable as referenced further up in the document. And then what subnet do I plug this network interface into? Also go grab that from the template as well. Now we finally have all the dependencies to go ahead and add our VM. So here's our virtual machine. Got a whole bunch of different variables and things that we're going to be adding on. You can see at the top that the virtual machine depends on the storage account, and it also depends on the network interface. So now it's going to go ahead and make sure those things were created before it continues on. We can set the VM size. We're going to set some things about the OS profile, the computer name, the admin username, the admin password. In this example, we're using an admin username and password as a parameter. Highly do not recommend you typing in your usernames and passwords for real. I really don't recommend you typing in your usernames and passwords and then storing them in templates in GitHub. Because whenever you fork a repo in GitHub, you get every single commit and history of that file. So let's just say you type in your username and password and you send it up to GitHub and you go, oh, damn, I didn't want to do that. I'm going to go back and make it Xxxx so nobody knows what my username and password is. But no, the actual username and password history is stored. So you can go back and read that history and get that information. That's why it's also really important not to put like storage account keys in GitHub and stuff like that, because people will go back and scrape GitHub for secrets and then use them against you. Yes?
It's actively being scanned.
Huh?
It's actively being scanned.
Oh yeah. Yeah, pretty much all the time.
Within the hour, you'll get it.
Yeah, so if you put a storage account up there, like with a key, so like if you build a, if you go ahead and build a thing and then put the key up there, basically it'll get scraped, you've got to delete it, that's got to go. It's just, so just manage your secrets. Just know that if you're going to start putting templates in source control, that you really do need an external secret management system. But this is just a template that we use for an example So I'm not too worried about my username and passwords because I pretty much delete all of this stuff right away. So anyway, username and password, storage profile. This is where you pick the image. So image publisher, offer, Windows version, the latest version. If we go up to my parameters file, you'll see that I'm calling Windows server. You can call whatever image you want. You want to deploy Linux servers, pick the Linux options, it's fine. We're going to put in a OS disk down here. We're going to take the new storage account name and we're going to go ahead and add a container name and we're going to build. You can see with this particular line here that you can concatenate things together and just smush different variables and information together to build entire URLs, to build entire names of things. We want to know what network interface to plug it into, and we want to turn on some diagnostics. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now this template, it's got a lot of red in it just because it's not, all my commas and stuff aren't in the right place. But this template would pretty much run. This is what's also particularly nice about using a good editor is you're going to get some reds, you're going to get some greens to kind of help you figure out where you need to fix things. Now this is great. This is going to go ahead and build one VM the exact way that I want it. But if I'm building VMs and I'm building them with templates, I might as well build lots of VMs. So the final little step that I'm going to show, final trick in here, is the ability to count. Basically tell Azure to use the template and use it as many times as I specify by adding in this counting function. I'm going to start at the top, got some notes here. In one of our parameters, we have to declare that we want to count. So in order to do that, we just add count, and it's an integer, and we set a default value. Great, I want to make 3 VMs. Awesome. I can change that to 5, I can change it to 12. I'm going to get as many as I want multiple times. These are all some of the parameters that we discussed. I'm going to go down to the resource. Now, anytime we want more than one thing, we say, hey, I want to copy that index. That little counting goes on. I'm going to count to 3. And every time I run something that I'm going to need more than one of, I want you to see what number you're on and make that one. Now, in this template, I don't need to count the storage account. I don't need to count the virtual network. I just create one of those and use it for everything. But I do need to count that public IP address. So you can see I added the copy index there. And I've also added the copy index on the domain name label because I'm going to have to go ahead and create a DNS name. Now what this is going to do for me is I'm using that number. It's going to do things like DNS name for public IP, whatever I'm going to pick, number 1. Whatever I'm going to pick, number 2. That'll make them unique. So I also have to declare, you have to declare what you're going to call this. I got a public IP address, I'm counting them. What am I going to call this bucket of public IP addresses? We're just going to call it the pub copy bucket. So pub copy, and the parameters, however many I'm going to count. I declared that up in the integer, 3 in this case. So great, I'm telling the JSON template that when you get to this resource account, this resource item, count up however many I need to in the number, and basically put them all in a bucket. So great, I'm making a bucket of public IP addresses. I'm also not going to make a bucket of virtual networks, but I want to point out something here, that in this network template, I've created several subnets, 1, 2, 3. This is a nested resource. I've got one network, several subnets. You can't count in there. You can't create, hey, make randomly 12 different subnets and use a count. So you can't use this copy index in a nested resource. So don't try to get super fancy and count multiple subnets in a nested thing. You can't use it. Another nested resource would be extra OS or extra data disks on a VM. So you can't count in those locations. You have to build those out separately and then reference them. So I'm just wanted to call that out so that you don't struggle with that. Okay, Some of the other things we need to count is the network interface. Now, the depends on matters now. So as I'm creating a network interface, I just made network interface number 1. I want to match it with the public IP address number 1. So depends on pub copy. Make sure you go to that bucket of IP addresses and grab one to get matched with this network interface. So marry those, it starts marrying these things together. Okay. We also need to declare that we're going to copy the NIC because we're going to make a bucket of NICs as well. Now here in the VM, you can see we're going to use the copy index as part of the name. We've concatenated nano VM. This template actually is going to build the nano VMs. Nano VM plus whatever number we happen to be on. Count 1, count 2, count 3. We're going to get Dns Name. And we're going to make that bucket of VMs the VM copy. So we need to loop the VMs to declare that there. We also, VMs depended on the NIC. So go ahead when you build this VM, reach into the NIC copy and get one of those that are created. The OS profile, that's the computer name within the actual operating system. We're going to use the copy index to name that. We're also going to name the OS disk with it down there as well. We're going to use that to name the NIC. And we're going to just declare that in a few places. So now that's going to actually duplicate our VM. So now if I run this script, I will get 3 or 4 VMs, or 3 in this case. So let's pop over to ISC. This is bigger. So I don't want to touch Azure. I'm going to use my phone for this probably. It's been a while on this machine. So what I'm going to do is use Powershell. So I'm actually using Powershell here, but I'm just going to use Powershell to call this Json template. So I'm going to go logging into this. And password. Okay, so it's going to go ahead and log me in. Now I have 2 subscriptions, so I want to make sure that I'm going to use the Visual Studio one, so I'm just going to set the context there. Now for reference, in the green there, that is the URL to my template in GitHub. So this is my Nanos Lab deploy GitHub. So I have just broken this out into a couple variables. So I'm going to go ahead and set those variables. So you can see I wanted to find it in my Nanos Lab server repository. I wanted to use the template file of Nanos Lab deploy. And I already have a parameters file that I used for a previous thing for Silicon Valley Code Camp. So we're just going to reuse that parameters file, and I'm going to set those assets. Now, just to show you that there's nothing up my sleeve here, let's go over to my resource groups. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to create a brand new resource group for today. And I'm going to do new Azure resource group. So it's going to take my resource group for PackIT Pros and put it in the West. And that should be fine. That's succeeded. So I'm going to go back over here and refresh, and we should see PackIT Pros. There it is. PackIT Pros, just PackIT Pros. So now we have my PackIT Pros resource group, and it's empty. We're going to go here and deploy this Nanos Lab deploy, and we're going to use this template parameters file. So just so that we can know what we're going to be looking for, it's going to create some stuff that says VCC demo, and we are going to All right, it's going to do Nano Server Technical Preview, which oh no, might not work, because it's not technical preview anymore. Hold on, let's edit that. Get a template where I know is right, so I can get the right name. Give me just a second, because I want to make sure we're actually going to deploy something that works. Otherwise, it would just look sad. So let's see. Let's do. We'll do this one. Let's fly by the seat of our pants and see if that actually works. Alright. If not, we'll see some errors and we can actually look at troubleshooting that. Alright. So where were we? Alright, we are going to go ahead and deploy this. So this is one line of JSON, or one line of PowerShell that's going to call that template, call the parameters file, and use verbose. Verbose is awesome. It will give us a line-by-line, blue for happiness, red for unhappiness when we go ahead and deploy this template. So let's just see what happens. So now you can see what it's doing. Oh yeah, invalid. Awesome. Because, what did I do wrong? Can you tell? Oh, you can barely see that red. That's horrible. One of the great things about using verbose mode is that it'll usually give you a pretty good idea of where you screwed up. So you still can't really see this very well with the colors, but it's saying that the nano server that I changed the parameters to wasn't in the allowed values of my actual template. So let me just pop back over and edit that template to allow that. Uh, 2016 nano server. Now, one of the other things that I discovered about Git is sometimes you commit and their content delivery network is not as fast as you'd like it for Azure, so sometimes you have to give it a little bit. It's updated on the GitHub server, but hasn't kind of gotten out to where Azure's going to grab it. So now we'll see if that works again. It can be a little frustrating because you'll be like, but I know I changed it. Yeah, see, it's still not there. Give it a little minute. Because I know it's there because it's showing up here in raw. 16. Yeah. This is when it's going to take like 5 minutes to sync stuff on the back. Not blind. allow values. Oh, fine. Let's just pick something bigger to run that. It's there. Alright. Fine, GitHub. I will run a different thing then. We will do data center. Data center in there. We'll do something old for the sake of. Do something old for the sake of it. What do I have in there? What does it look? We'll do R2. It'll just take longer to deploy. One of the things that's nice about Nano is it deploys really quickly.
It's your story. It's your story.
And of course, now that change hasn't replicated fast enough. So we'll give it a couple minutes. I'll come back and pick it up again. Let's see. While we're waiting for that to refresh on the back end, does anybody have any questions? Yes?
The PowerShell script, you off of it.
Yeah.
You have that on your GitHub.
Oh, there we go. Now it's going. There we go. Do I have that on my GitHub? That PowerShell script line? I don't, but I could put it there if you'd like me to put it there. You mean the whole kind of thing that's just right there. Yeah, I can put that up there for you. Just to give you an idea. It's funny, I have one big script, especially for like my demos and stuff, where I put the login at the top, I get just so that I can kind of set everything up that I want. But the only most important one is the new Azure RM resource group. So now it's working. I don't know if it's actually doing nano servers now or which version of the things that we've changed is actually running, but you can see we've got a lot of blue going on. And what it's doing is it's checking the deployment status with the verbose every couple minutes, and every couple seconds, and it's going to tell you, things are still provisioning, things are succeeded. So if we pop back over to my portal, and look inside that resource group, now we can start seeing the things that it just went ahead and created. So that resource group is now filled up with that template. So JSON deployments are actually my favorite way of deploying stuff now in Azure, because I don't have to bother going through the blades, and I don't have to fiddle with a bunch of stuff. I just go into the template and then I copy and paste things. The challenge is, though, that you don't get with the portal is that when you do the drop downs from the portal, the images that are available in the back end are the ones you get to choose from. That problem that I had with picking an image, now that Nano is released, every once in a while you have to, when you're writing your templates, you have to use PowerShell to call into Azure and be like, what are the image names, so that you can update your templates so that you're doing the right ones. So there is a little bit of maintenance there that you have to do that to get the templates. Now, what if you want to reverse it? You can kind of cheat this a little bit. What if you have no idea where to begin with the template, and you're like, I want to build it in the portal, and once I get it right, I want to export it. You can actually do that, which is totally doable. Let's just say I want, let's see, I've got something that has one thing in it. Oh, containers lab, let's not do that. What's in here? Oh, a couple of VMs. Oh, there we go. There's something easy. There's one VM, a Linux VM inside this thing. So if I want to go ahead and be like, well, this is great, I like this. Maybe I want to get this VM. Maybe I want to take a look at this resource group. Great, let's take a look at this. How can I get this out of here? I can go down here and go automation script. How can I automate this? So now I can go ahead and take a look. Does this look familiar? JSON templates. So I can use this as a way to get this out. Now, this is going to give me a parameter for every individual thing. It's not going to do anything elegant like, oh, there's 6 VMs, let's do a count integer for you. It's not going to do any of that, but it's going to get you some of the critical things that you might not know all the answers to. It's going to give you some of the parameters, some of the fancier parameters that are in the back end for the stuff that comes out of Azure. And it's going to give you all of the resources. It's going to give you a good starting point. So you can export that template. You can also get the equivalent in the Azure command line interface. You can also, if you want to do it all in PowerShell, you can get the equivalent commands in PowerShell and see what that PowerShell script looks like. You get it in .NET and get it in Ruby. So most of the basic stuff comes out. If you have a resource group that has a bunch of, has Key Vault in it or has a couple of the newer features, you might get a warning that says we don't have the template versions for this yet. You can't export, some of your resources might be missing, but this does give you a great way to sort of, oh, I built what I want. Now let me go see what that looks like in a template and then, reverse engineer that from there. And that's it. Let's see if my script is done. Not totally done yet, but it's running along, and once that's completed, we'll have deployed something. So outside of needing to put my little cheater PowerShell starter script up in my GitHub in that template folder for a couple folks, any other questions? Everybody's happy. Who's going to go deploy templates tomorrow? He's like, I'm going to go deploy some templates. Yeah.
Just gotta have a question.
Yeah, no, nobody's. Hey, this is the third time I've done this presentation, so I might actually, and I did it without my slides. So,
Nice.
I'm actually starting to know what's in my different examples there. Yeah.
So once you create the template or create the virtual environment, you want to extend. So I want to create like an Active Directory and I want to extend it to my system.
Okay, so now I wouldn't necessarily want to try to do that in a template right out of the bat. I mean, and that's usually configuration that is within the Azure portal. But once you create that, you can then go into the portal and continue on. So if you want to go ahead and turn on, any of the connectors and set those sort of things up, that you can do it. Some of those things, particularly the Azure Active Directory stuff, they're still porting some of that stuff over to the new portal, so it doesn't have the ability to templatize it in quite the same way. So you have to go into like the classic portal to make some of those configuration changes.
New virtual, it's all on the classic portal.
A lot of the Azure AD stuff is still in the classic portal. They're working quite diligently, and I think they've started to move some of the stuff over.
What about the container?
The containers are all in Azure Resource Manager in this version. Yeah, you can't do anything containers in Classic. So if you want to do anything with containers, like the Azure Container Service or any of that sort of stuff, that's all in ARM. Ideally, if you're just starting out in Azure, you want to try to do everything as possible in ARM and don't dip back into Classic unless there's a feature specifically that you need to turn on for that.
So we're trying to do a on-premise with testing.
Yeah, then definitely go for ARM. If you happen to have classic resources and you want to combine them together, we now have our VNet peering, so you can actually peer two virtual networks, a classic one and a resource manager one, and then use them so that those resources can talk to each other. So that's
You can turn off after that.
yeah. Well, once you've transferred everything, I mean, yeah, you can also do things like You use AZ copy and different tools to move from storage accounts in Classic to move stuff into new storage accounts.
Now, once you set it up, you know, on the West, can you move back and forth?
No, well, it depends. Like the classic answer is it depends. So we do have like Azure Site Recovery, which will allow you to set up VMs and fail them into the cloud, and you can fail them to another location, either another Azure, VM, another region, or go from hybrid, from on-prem into the cloud and stuff like that. Matter of fact, if you're thinking about doing, say a say like a VMware on-prem scenario and move that into the cloud, you can actually use the site recovery tool to set up the failover and let it do the failover into the network and then just never fail it back. And that saves you having to do a lot of the back end. You just put the agent on and tell it where to go. So you can do that. If you set up VMs in the East region or the West region, pick a region, and you use the geo-redundant, not the locally redundant data, what will happen with that is if we declare a disaster on the West Coast and a whole data center goes down, a whole region goes down, San Andreas Fault breaks off, and we all like roll in. Yeah, I saw that movie. It all goes in like that. We will then basically, we'll have copied all of your data as the geo-redundance to the other data center, and we'll swing all the URLs over. But that needs to be a disaster that we declare, not one that you can declare. You can also use the one with the read-only access, and you can make the data that you put in that alternative region read access only, so you can potentially use that as a testing scenario, and it's good for databases and stuff like that. You can read them in both locations. So there's a whole bunch of sort of different ways you can take advantage of the storage and the locations. But even in the locally redundant storage, there's 3 copies of the data there. So the likelihood of your data entirely disappearing is kind of slim. I can't make any guarantees, but potentially better than what you might be doing on-prem, maybe, depending on the size of your work. So, Doug, do you have anything else you want me to cover? Oh, look, it's done. So there we go. It built 3. Oh, one other thing about count, and I forgot to mention because I have this on a slide and not in real life. Let me flip back over so I can point out to where you see it. When we're counting, where it says copy index, you see these little parentheses right up there? If you leave it blank, the computer counts like a computer. So you say you want 3 VMs, they're numbered 0, 1, and 2. If you want them to count like a human, you throw a 1 in there, and it'll start with 1, and then do 1, 2, 3 for you. So just keep that in mind when you call the copy index. If you want to go ahead and make it count like a human, throw a 1 in there. If you want it to count like a computer and start at 0, just leave the parentheses blank. That's my last tip. All right, Doug. That was my tutorial on putting stuff in Azure.
What do you think? Sold? So I got a question. You want to build machines tonight?
8 o'clock.
What?
It's 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
Next month? Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have anything planned. Next week I go up to Microsoft for the MVP summit. So I have no idea what's going to happen. I might be able to bring stuff back, maybe not. Just depends. Microsoft hasn't really told us anything. I'm Microsoft MVP for Hyper-V virtualization, and I also kind of double over on the security side, so we'll see what I can come back with. My thought is to get you hands-on experience starting to build some of these machines. Because what I'm seeing in industry is everybody's going to the cloud, right? or hybrid cloud. So people are having on-prem equipment, but then backing up or having some services that are up in the cloud. Is that what you're seeing too, or is that direction?
Let's take a look at Azure backup server.
Next month?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a new hybrid piece, you just roll it out. This is last month, it's a backup server where you can back your on-prem stuff up.
That's been around.
But it's got a release date of last month.
Oh, they must have updated it. It's kind of been, yeah, I thought it's been around. But anyway, yes. So that's actually pretty cool because that means you can put the server on-prem, but when you back it up, then it backs it up to the cloud. So yeah, so that's pretty cool. You've got site recovery. Oh, one of the other things that's cool, I pulled it up. You can't
Site
recovery. Yeah, site recovery. And I haven't looked into it, gosh, in about 6 months, which means it's probably all new now, and I have to look into it again. But as to what you can do, when I first looked at it, you basically fake it. I don't even think you have to fake it anymore into thinking that Azure is actually an alternative on-prem. Like I build a fake out, yeah, anyway. But anyway, I build a fake on-prem network in Azure, and then I would fail it into a different region. Anyway, the other thing I want to point out, if you haven't looked at yet in Azure, it's pretty cool, is server management tools. So this is the ability, say we're starting to build like nano servers, and nano servers have no GUI, but you still want to be able to get some of the basic management, or you've got a bunch of VMs that are the full versions up there and you want to be able to manage them. You can use this management tools connection. You basically build a gateway to the virtual network that those machines live in, and it creates a little portal where you can then click on each of these machines. They're not running, so it won't work when I click on them. But when you click on the machine, it will give you GUI, and it'll let you get into the event logs with the GUI and get, all the basics that you would try to get out of the server manager portal right out of Azure for all of your Azure VMs. And you can actually tie this back onto on-prem if you wanted and look at on-prem versions of server as well and have them all in the portal and click on them.
Is the nano server kind of where to like stop or use
If Windows Server and Linux had a baby, it would be Nano, okay? It's a very small footprint, but using just the Windows core. So you get that small footprint that people are accustomed to with Linux, without all of the bells and whistles of the GUI and stuff like that. It's all command line.
What's a good example to use it for?
Let's see. You can use it as your hosts, your virtual machine hosts. So think ESXi. Kind of like what you get with that, it does that. You can do cluster services, file services, all those kind of like a lot of the core infrastructure stuff that you don't necessarily,
Not
AD yet, but some DNS functions, yes. DHCP, I'm not sure. DHCP there.
So the whole idea with Nano is you can put it on a 12-year-old, 15-year-old SD card, right? Because it's less than
600 megs.
Yeah, 500-600 megs.
How many 12-year-old SD cards do you have laying around?
I don't know, my kids got
maybe,
it.
but so you can use it as a base, as the underlying infrastructure for all that. You can use it as a container host, and then you can also use it as to run as containers because you're going to get the core parts out of it as well. So
And so are some of the servers, like VMware, you can boot off an SD card, right? They've got a little slot so you put the OS, right? Microsoft is doing the same thing with Nano, same idea behind that. You can load it on a SD card. So Nano Server, the whole idea behind that is to minimize the attack surface. So we're seeing things that are all pre-set up like DHCP, DNS. And that way you run it as a 500, as a real tiny chunk of code.
So are they just not, they have a lot of things just updated, or I mean, how
Well, here, this is kind of, Janelle, you can jump in here, but this is a story I'm hearing, right? Is if you have a DHCP server and that's all it does, you don't have to apply all the extra updates.
Right.
Right? Yeah, because that's all you need. So it's a small, lean chunk of code.
It's not like their version of Docker.
Yeah.
But it's not, no, Docker.
But it's not Docker.
It's not Docker because
Yeah,
Docker is operating system virtualization. This is not virtualization of the operating system. This is, I've got a couple slides.
So just make it like a function for a specific.
It's just, it's the optimized server that you've probably always wanted. It's Visual Studio Dev Essentials is what.
So we have server, right, with the full GUI.
No, that's not it.
Then you have server with reduced GUI, right?
It's just a.
Then you have server core.
So I.
Wait, and then you have nano server. So each time we're cutting out chunks of code.
There's what the text recent, so the recent big DDoS attack, it was an IoT attack. So they had a big problem of DVRs, and cameras, and thermostats, and IoT stuff. Things that don't get patched. It's just
Oh, wait,
little
okay,
thing,
hold on.
little tiny bits of code that don't do anything. They also don't ever get updated, don't get patched, So they did it as the attack service, but have they made it? Have they hardwired
Well-
a little encouraged kernel that's never getting touched? Or
Wait, so you know the whole idea behind, or at least that last IoT attack, you know how that happened? Have you followed that?
Yeah, phone.
It's because they had a common password and user account that's in firmware that can't be changed. That's a story I've heard.
One manufacturer.
And it's all made by one manufacturer, right?
So it's like a built-in backend.
So nano server, you know, you're customizing it. It's to your environment. So the whole idea behind it is it's small chunk of code, less stuff to attack.
That's correctly programmed as opposed to forwarding on the IoT.
Well, theoretically.
As long as it's secure.
Yeah, I mean, they're both servers, right?
The quick link, hold on, to get to.
The upgrade, right? There you go.
It's updating us.
Yeah, and the thing with nano,
That's the short URL. Visual, aka.ms vsde Visual Studio Dev Essentials will take you to the blog post for $25. Here, hold on.
If you make it smaller,
Yeah, I should make it smaller. Yeah.
just use Zoom it.
Yeah.
Did you Zoom it?
Well, it's not. It doesn't zoom Notepad.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it's not now.
then.
No, I just use the plus and the minus. So
No,
anyway.
no.
Okay.
We're saying if it just Zoom it.
Okay. Well, I don't have it on here. Here, some nano. Here, I've got some nano slides.
You got a deck?
I've got some. Yes.
You got a partial
I
deck?
got a partial deck that I can show you on nano server, just so that we can talk about it.
So if I would show this to us,
Yeah, I can show this to you. So, go. What is this doing? I'm going to be that horrible person that just shows you the slides in PowerPoint. But anyway, so Nano Server, it's an installation option. So it's smaller than Core. It's got, you use it for key roles. It's got full driver support. But here's kind of compare. So this was back from 2004 or 2014, service and bulletins. But you can see, like, this is full server, and that's all the important bulletins it needed for the year. And that's core, it needed less because there's less code base, and nano only needed 9. Same with critical bulletins and reboots required. So by making the footprint smaller of the OS, pulling out the parts that you don't usually need, the GUI and who needs IIS all the time and all that sort of stuff, and pull all that code out, now you're looking at less patching and less servicing. Deployment is also faster too. Setup time for full server in seconds, nano server, disk footprint, gigs, less than gigs. VHD size, gigs, smaller than gigs. So the end result though is this. You get, that's it. There is no GUI. There's a username and a password and a domain so you can log on and fix the IP address that you screwed up when you typed it in when you deployed it. Like, that's it. It uses very little memory and it's less than 500 megs when it's deployed. This is totally headless. You are not walking up to a nano server and logging in and trying to do stuff with it. You can manage it with the full GUI tools, your RSAT tools and stuff like that, connect it up and you can get the same info, get the logs, all that sort of stuff, but you need to manage it remotely using RSAT tools, using PowerShell, using whatever. But you're not logging into this. Some of the roles, so you've got failover clustering, Hyper-V, Windows Defender, let's see, Hyper-V guest driver, DNS server, desired state configuration host, web server. So very small roles. Remotely manage it however you want. Just don't log on to the thing. So you can get event viewer, you can get PowerShell remoting. If you're using it in VMs, you can use, Hyper-V manager. So.
Is it Active Directory?
No, Active Directory, you gotta think about it, it makes sense that AD is such a kind of a core, integral part of the operating system that being able to pull it out and it's fluffy. Being able to kind of scale that down and get it to work on a version of server that you've ripped out all of the guts of besides the core takes a little effort. So I can't wait until you can run a domain controller on Nano server. I mean, they don't work half the time anyway, right? I mean, they just sit there. I mean, they work in the morning most of the time, and then in the evenings, and when people change their passwords, that's when they're doing the most of their work. Doesn't need to be a big server. So it'd be great to be when we can run that on Nano, but not there. And then the remote manager server tool that.
Right, so what I can tell you is AD is probably the most common when it's requested.
Oh yeah, I could totally believe that. And then here is the server management tool in Azure. So if you want to do the Azure-based thing, that's what you kind of get from the server. You get a little portal. Yeah.
If you had a network stack installation, you could definitely have solution.
Oh yeah. You could if you.
Making sure that
Oh yeah, you can.
always have to-
Oh yeah. You can totally get to it. It's just that once you're there, there's not much to do. But yeah, you can totally SSH into it.
You can sconfig to it.
Is that on there? Hold on.
Yeah, well, right here.
They're both on it.
Oh, then
I don't know about
we'll
that.
hear.
Am I reading that right? Everything's
replaces it.
subject to change.
Everything's always subject to change.
Yeah.
But
No, it's next.
it said it replaced. This is the Azure version includes replacement tools. So if you are using
I see.
sconfig, then the Azure portal will cover that. Not that you can, and because that's not Nano specific. I think they finally ported this tool back to server at least 2012 R2. 2012. I don't think it goes back to cover 2008 servers, but I'm pretty sure 2012
I
now.
don't think it does
Either, but
I don't know about 12.
I believe I heard them say 12 works now.
R2, 12 and 12 R2?
12 and 12 R2.
Okay.
But before it was 2016 and Nano only. All right,
Okay.
you've squeezed everything out of me, what I can think of for VMs in Azure today.
All right. Anybody got questions, comments? Is this the future? I think so.
That's in small early.
My small Earl again, yes.
You know, we gotta get your Zoom in.
I don't know, usually the plus just works fine. So it's aka.ms/vsde, Visual Studio Developer Essentials. It takes you to a blog post, it tells you all about it. It'll probably fix your subscription issue. Yes?
Slide video.
I can make them available. This is from a deck that I gave at Angel Beat a couple weeks ago, so I can make that part available. It's probably somewhere already, but I can send Doug an email. You can also just ping me on Twitter or something to remind me. On my blog, whatever. Most everything for the templates to work through the examples that I gave you. I think I actually have a share from Silicon Valley Code Camp that they asked. So basically, somebody just ping me and I'll gather it and point anybody to anything that you need. So. I'm Janelle.Crothers at Microsoft. I'm Janelle at Pack IT Pros. I'm Janelle at Tech Bunny. Most of you know how to find.
So I got a quick question. So for next month, what we'll do is we'll do hands-on. We'll do a little intro. We'll have you build virtual machines. up in Azure.
You gonna write the labs for that? 'Cause
No, we'll do it together. We wing it.
I might have,
I
I might have a containers lab by next
Well, I might have something for next week too.
Matter of fact, I'm pretty positive I'll have a containers lab by next meeting.
Let's see that.
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Well, you kind of can. I mean, if you go to my GitHub, that thing that said container camp.
Okay, hold on. Let me talk to you
Kind of
on
working
this.
on it, but
So
anyway.
next month, what I like to do is hands-on. I got one other quick question. Mail server blew up. Actually, it got a flat tire about a year ago, and it's been kind of limping along. So I completely rebuilt it last night. So it was one of those 3 o'clock in the morning things. If you check the time when I finally sent out the meeting announcement. Anybody have problems? Or everybody getting the emails? That's what I really care about. Okay.
Should be into the answer.
Don't get me started. Look, mailing list has been the big Achilles heel of this entire group.
I should just write a blog post with the links to everything. Shouldn't I? Wouldn't that be the easiest way to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, yeah,
And then I could send it out with the listserv.
there you go. Or people could just,
Aka Pro's website.
oh my gosh, I'll just write a web. We have a website, yeah.
And maybe, you know,
No, I update it. What?
maybe put a link in there to where it's being broadcast.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Oh yeah, you sent me that email about 2 years ago. No, I will. Priorities, you know? Okay. So list server's working fine. I think we're done for tonight. I know I'm tired. I was up late.
I did all the talking.
I know, but
You're tired? I did all the talking.
I was up till 3.
I was up at 3.
You got kids.
Yeah.
I still got them.
Yeah, you can't get rid of yours. What?
He's running stuff all the way in.
Wait, don't shut off your shit.
Why?
I want to give you Zoom.
I don't need it.
Yeah, you do.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do.
No,
It's
I just
receptive.
don't need to. I don't care. It's
Oh, some presenter.
the plus and the minus works on everything except Notepad. If I type that URL in PowerShell in
It works on
ISU,